Morning sunlight poured through the threadbare curtains of Mia's cramped kitchen, painting the cracked linoleum gold while Leo stirred powdered cocoa with hopeful focus. Two grocery bags sagged in one of her arms, but the other hand clutched a single stamped envelope she had rewritten 3 times during the night. Rumor said tech billionaire Adrian Cole read every heartfelt letter that reached his desk, and that rumor felt like the first loose rung on a tall ladder out of worry. Rent was due Friday. The refrigerator moaned almost empty, and Leo's sneakers showed daylight through the toes. Yet Mia inhaled and chose to fight with paper instead of pride. She smooth-lined notebook sheets across the table, the blue rules guiding her steady handwriting the way railroad tracks guide a train toward distant towns. Her introduction was simple: single mom, night shift cashier, loyal school volunteer, and believer in possibilities that hide behind polite requests. Mia described Leo's cardboard rockets that soared from their balcony, even when downtown winds tried to drag them earthward. She detailed Saturday trips to the public library, where picture books about galaxies felt like boarding passes to places their checkbook could never afford. $20,000, she wrote, would repair the roof, replace Leo's worn shoes, and fund the after-school coding club that kept him dreaming longer than homework did. She ended not with begging but with steady gratitude, because she knew dignity could walk through doors pity would never open. Reading the letter aloud, Mia ensured each sentence sounded kind and clear enough for a child to understand. Leo, coloring planets nearby, gave a solemn thumbs up. Folding the paper, her fingers trembled, not from fear of rejection, but from the unfamiliar thrill that somebody powerful might actually answer. The hallway mailbox yawned like a bronze portal, and with one soft push she launched the envelope into its quiet metal throat. Leo erupted in a cheer that echoed off stairwell walls, treating the drop like a mission launch countdown finally reaching 0. The next morning at the store, barcode beeps blended with her humming. Hidden inside every beep was a whispered reminder that help was now traveling at postal speed. That night she drew a small star on the kitchen calendar, labeling it day 1 after the letter, a secret constellation only she and Leo would track. Neighbors noticed her shoulders sitting higher, as though she had tucked sunrise into her pocket and dared the world to steal it. On day 2, Leo crafted a cardboard satellite, insisting that signals crossed galaxies quickly, so a letter crossing counties would reach its reader in no time. Spaghetti made from the last noodles in the pantry became a victory feast. Sauce freckles on the stove looked like little medals for courage. She pinned the postage receipt to the fridge, proof that bravery could wear ink and glue just as easily as armor. Even the aging elevator hummed a softer tune, its cables vibrating with the same optimism Mia felt climbing floor by floor. Before bed, Leo asked what kindness looked like up close, and she answered that it usually arrived when nobody was looking for applause. Rain drummed the windows overnight, and in her dream the droplets turned to silver coins filling every crack of worry. Dawn of day 3 came with identical clock digits, yet the apartment seemed wider because hope makes walls step back a little. A coworker teased that billionaires don't read mail, but Mia guarded her small, maybe like a candle cupped against careless wind. Walking home, she composed a mental letter to her past self, thanking that exhausted version for not surrendering to despair. In the evening, Leo taped new words, persevere, invent, to his wall, turning the bedroom into a garden sprouting syllables instead of stems. They decided each tick of the living room clock was actually a footstep of a hero drawing nearer. Cookies baked for day 4 filled the air with cinnamon promises and made the wait smell like December morning. Silence that night felt gentler, like a comma in a sentence still being written. Under hallway light, the calendar star gleamed beside ordinary dates, marking time with anticipation rather than dread. Leo wondered aloud if bravery could fit inside an envelope. Mia said yes, it already had. Their bedtime story featured explorers guided by kindness instead of compasses, which Leo declared the smarter technology. After lights out, Mia pictured the envelope riding elevators and conveyor belts until it rested beneath an important lamp somewhere high above city sidewalks. Streetlights slashed amber lines across the ceiling, reminding her that even borrowed light can show the way when money is scarce. She whispered gratitude for the simple fact that the letter existed, because sometimes action itself is half the miracle. Leo murmured dreams about rockets that carried thank you cards instead of astronauts. Mia fell asleep believing that answers travel silently and appear all at once like dawn spilling over the horizon. She did not know what the reply would say, but she sensed the story had already shifted, the way a train shifts when tracks start pointing uphill. Somewhere beyond the skyline, another morning waited to unwrap the next part of their journey. a promise that tomorrow would unfold like a well-worn map revealing new streets to explore. 300 miles away, Adrian Cole stood before floor-to-ceiling windows in the headquarters of his robotics empire. The skyline reflected as fractured light across his reading glasses. Stacks of documents waited for signatures, yet he always addressed personal mail first because it reminded him why he started building machines that help people. His assistant Ruby slipped Mia's envelope onto the top of the pile, explaining that the handwriting felt calmly determined in a way she could not ignore. Adrian sliced the envelope open and caught the faint scent of vanilla soap and supermarket ink, small clues pointing to a life carried on limited means and limitless resolve. The introduction gripped him. Single mom, night shift cashier, volunteer, dreamer, a quartet of titles that painted courage thicker than any metal. As he read about Leo's balcony rockets, childhood memories rushed back of evenings spent sketching circuit boards beneath a leaking attic roof. He paused beside an abstract sculpture, suddenly seeing the twist of metal as Leo's imagined rocket, and smiled at the symmetry of distant hopes meeting in his office. The library Saturday's paragraph triggered another echo, a teenage Adrian reading donated textbooks under flickering public lights, forming blueprints no one believed would fly. By the time Mia itemized roof repairs and coding fees, Adrian had already doubled her figure in his head and added scholarship possibilities for every kid in her neighborhood. He closed the letter like a fragile artifact, told Ruby to cancel investor lunch, and ordered the corporate jet fueled before reporters could sniff a headline. The executive calendar cleared in 10 minutes, because power means little if it cannot pivot toward goodness at full speed. While the pilot plotted a discreet route, Adrian penned a reply on embossed stationery stating simply that he would visit in 3 days to discuss the future. A wax seal bearing a constellation pressed shut the promise. He rarely used that seal, reserving it for commitments bound to change more than numbers on a ledger. The envelope went into a security pouch and then into a courier's hands with instructions to bypass bureaucracy and deliver before sunrise. Satisfied, Adrian strode through a lab where robotic arms tested gentle grips on glass eggs, reminding him that strength without gentleness breaks the very things worth protecting. Engineers stared, wondering what lit their boss's eyes brighter than prototype LEDs, but he offered no answer beyond a wave and a grin. That night on his balcony, he counted city lights and wondered how many belonged to families who needed only one door open to walk into wider possibility. Sleep tugged at him, yet excitement drew blueprint after blueprint in his notebook. Scholarship rules, community lab layouts, mentorship timelines. He practiced introducing himself to Mia as simply Adrian, not Billionaire Cole, determined to meet a mother as a man, not a monument. The courier texted confirmation at 6:07 a.m. The envelope rested in a modest mailbox, its journey faster than most dreams reached dawn. Adrian filed the notification among personal treasures, right beside a grade school science fair ribbon, still smelling faintly of glue and chalk. Meanwhile, Mia discovered the thick envelope amid unpaid bills and electricity ads, her breath hiccuping at the unfamiliar weight of luxury paper. She and Leo galloped upstairs, door half closed, tearing the seal as if unwrapping the first gift of a long-awaited holiday. Leo read aloud the promise of a visit. His voice cracked with laughter, and the living room exploded into a dance named the Billionaire Boogie. They taped the new letter next to the original, 2 wings on a fridge ready to lift the apartment clear off its weary hinges. Word traveled faster than elevators. Neighbors poured in offering spare paint, folding chairs, and moral support thicker than fresh mortar. Someone donated daisies for the windowsill, another offered to rewire the hallway bulb, and within hours floor 4 resembled a festival crew in safety vests. Mia cleaned until faucets shone and corners lost their cobweb whispers, each sweep of the mop erasing a month of quiet despair. Across the country, Adrian packed jeans, sneakers, and the lucky blue notebook into a nondescript duffel, leaving suits on their polished hangers. He asked Ruby to book a rental sedan, no chauffeurs, no paparazzi, just a man driving toward a promise. To avoid spectacle, he chose the regional airport where coffee kiosks smelled of cinnamon more than celebrity. Before boarding, he slipped Mia's letter into his inside pocket, close to his heartbeat, the safest vault available. 35,000 feet above clouds, he revised scholarship criteria again, ensuring single parents never had to prove their dignity in triplicate. He envisioned Leo launching real rockets one day, maybe from a desert runway bearing the apartment building's street name in tribute. Descending toward twilight, he watched sunlight smear the horizon and whispered that some flights carry more gravity on landing than on takeoff. Mia, at that same moment, practiced a welcome speech in the mirror, replacing self-doubt with steady syllables. Leo rehearsed a handshake that morphed into a fist bump, unwilling to treat their guest like untouchable royalty. A neighbor strung paper lanterns in the hallway, each one shaped like a tiny envelope glowing with borrowed moonlight. The building vibrated with low-key thrill, like a guitar string plucked softly before the concert starts. Everyone settled into an uneasy sleep, jolted awake by every creak, each sound a rumor that tomorrow had arrived early, holding its breath the way a page holds ink before the next courageous stroke. Dawn of day 3 rose crisp and blue, and Mia woke to cinnamon rolls donated by the bakery that believed celebrations should begin with sugar. She inspected every hallway bulb for the third time, deciding light was another way of saying welcome. Children chalked rockets and sunflowers on the sidewalk, labeling stick figures Mia, Leo, and friendly visitor, their letters wiggling like excited worms. A modest silver sedan turned a corner precisely at 10, its quiet engine betraying no hint of billion-dollar horsepower. Adrian stepped out wearing jeans and a navy windbreaker, carrying one towering sunflower whose bright face seemed to look directly at Mia 5 stories up. The courtyard audience hushed, pulses synchronizing with camera shutters, even though no reporters had been invited. Mia's knees trembled, but Leo squeezed her hand and whispered that big stories are just little stories that kept going. They met at the lobby doorway, sunlight stretching between them like a red carpet they had neither time nor money to rent. Adrian offered the sunflower first, explaining that tall flowers understand perseverance because wind tests them every day. Leo responded by launching into the billionaire boogie, and Adrian's laugh cracked open the tension like an eggshell. Building manager Mrs. Ortega guided them inside, proud that her scrubbed tiles now clicked beneath historic footsteps. In the apartment, Adrian noticed patched plaster and thrift store couches and concluded that bravery sometimes decorates itself with repairs instead of trophies. Over tea, he asked Mia to describe the photograph collage above the sink. She told stories of late bills paid and early Saturdays spent tutoring neighborhood kids. Listeners filled the doorway, turning the visit into a living room podcast without microphones. Adrian shared how secondhand computers and strangers' faith steered his life away from dead-end statistics. He returned Mia's original letter, laminated for safekeeping, saying it now traveled with him like a compass. Leo accepted a voucher for space camp tucked inside and introduced himself as future captain of Starship Optimism. Plans spilled onto paper napkins, roof repair timelines, laptop orders for the coding club, and an outline for a single-parent scholarship dubbed Starbright. After lemonade and pastries, Adrian invited Mia for a walk to the pier, promising Leo souvenir gull feathers. Salt air tousled their hair while fishing boats thumped gently against worn pylons, the harbor smelling of brine and fresh paint. Adrian admitted he came hoping to solve more than financial strain. He wanted to understand the courage that chooses hope over hiding. Mia confessed the letter had outgrown its original purpose and become a lighthouse for her own self-respect. They laughed at how paper can shrink oceans when sentences steer straight. At Pier's End, Adrian produced a folded chart detailing the scholarship rollout with Mia named advisory chair. Her gasp collided with a gull squeal. She traced her finger over the timeline as if reading Braille for a future she could finally feel. Heading back, they found Leo explaining Jupiter's moons to toddlers using a donut for scale. Adrian whispered that leadership often sprouts in kids who watch their parents fight storms with calm sails. Evenings set coral clouds above the courtyard, and neighbors strung fairy lights between balconies until the air itself glittered. Someone rolled out a borrowed telescope, declaring a stargazing party had been scheduled by popular demand. On the rooftop, Adrian helped align the scope. First star focus drew cheers that wobbled laundry lines. Mia's eyes reflected constellations while Adrian quietly drafted another promise inside his notebook. He projected Leo's favorite nebula onto the brick wall using a pocket projector, pledging to name the inaugural scholarship after that swirl of color. The crowd clapped, the sound skimming across shingles into the cooling sky. Mrs. Ortega produced cocoa from a thermos, labeling it fuel for dreamers, and nobody argued. Mia scanned the faces of neighbors, realizing that one envelope had turned tenants into teammates. A brisk wind tugged at the string lights, but they held firm, tiny bulbs refusing to blink out. Adrian promised to return tomorrow for community meetings, but only if the cocoa supply remained steady. Laughter followed them downstairs, echoing like marbles rolling through a giant cardboard maze. Before leaving, Adrian asked Mia to keep the sunflower alive as a living countdown toward new beginnings. She placed the stem in a glass jar on the windowsill, where its golden face nodded at city lights, approving the partnership taking root, petals quivering with stories yet unspoken, certain that daylight would return tomorrow wearing even brighter colors than today, and eager to prove kindness can scale taller than any downtown tower when neighbors water its roots together. Darkness settled over the courtyard like soft velvet, but string lights zigzagged overhead, casting gentle halos on folding chairs arranged in a loose circle. Residents balanced cocoa mugs and phones set to silent, because no one wanted a buzzing ringtone to interrupt whatever magic might unfold. Leo guided Adrian to a portable telescope, aligning it toward Jupiter until gasps rose as loud as summer cicadas. Mia watched Leo's joy and realized the planet's distant storms somehow felt less fierce than the turbulence her family had weathered on Earth. Adrian invited Mia to peer through the eyepiece. When her breath fogged the lens, he quietly cleaned it with his shirt sleeve, treating the moment like fragile glass. The crowd oohed playfully, sensing currents beyond astronomy dancing between the two adults. Guitarist Nora strummed a mellow tune, her chords drifting upward like warm smoke from a campfire. Under their glow, Adrian reached into his jacket and withdrew a pocket projector, casting Mia's favorite poem in silver text across the brick wall. Each line described seeds pushing through cracked sidewalks, echoing the resilience Mia lived daily. When the final stanza faded, Adrian knelt on one knee, the hush spreading so wide even distant traffic stalled in respect. A velvet box appeared, small yet sparkling under fairy lights, its hinge clicking louder than any amplifier. Adrian thanked Mia for reminding him that wealth without purpose was noise, and purpose without action was only daydreaming at a red light. He proposed not simply marriage but partnership, building scholarships, raising Leo, and greeting future storms with shared umbrellas. Tears pooled in Mia's eyelashes, refracting light like microprisms, turning the courtyard into an accidental kaleidoscope. Leo led a slow clap that morphed into applause thunderous enough to scare a sleepy pigeon off the roof edge. Mia managed a trembling yes, extending her hand while the crowd collectively held its breath the way children do around birthday candles. The ring slid onto her finger, a single diamond ring by tiny stones shaped to resemble orbiting planets, jewelry telling a science story. Cheers exploded, echo bouncing between brick walls like a jubilant pinball. Adrian rose and kissed Mia lightly, a snapshot sure to live forever in neighborhood lore. Someone flipped the music to an upbeat track, causing toddlers and elders alike to sway, proving joy ignores birth years. Mrs. Patel passed out homemade cookies shaped like envelopes, because dessert tastes sweeter when it matches the theme. Leo performed the Billionaire boogie again, this time with backup dancers aged 7 to 70. Adrian toasted the neighbors with sparkling cider, promising grants for every local shop that had donated something to tonight's glow. Flashbulbs popped from phone cameras, but participants focused more on dancing than documenting. Mia whispered gratitude into Adrian's ear, her words lost in cheers but felt nonetheless. Overhead the moon appeared gigantic, as if photobombing the engagement. A breeze flapped laundry on rooftop lines, white shirts clapping sleeves together like applauding ghosts. Guitarist Nora switched to a lullaby, guiding the tempo back toward conversation. Adrian thanked the guitarist with a bow, then offered her scholarship edition backstage passes for his company's music tech incubator. Children chased soap bubbles blown by Mrs. Ortega, each orb reflecting the entire courtyard in a fleeting rainbow shell. Mia savored cocoa now lukewarm yet delicious, because happiness apparently raises beverage ratings. Couples slow danced, singles hummed, and the courtyard vibrated with collective relief that good news can occupy real addresses. Adrian announced a midnight toast to courage, counting down as if launching a satellite. Plastic cups clinked softly at 0. Fireflies joined a light show, tiny gold sparks zipping like punctuation around the evening's long sentence. Leo curled beside a stack of extra chairs, fighting sleep but unwilling to leave the front row of history. Mia draped her sweater over him, then looked up to find Adrian watching with a softness money could never purchase. He whispered that dawn planning would start at 8, but dreams could start immediately, she agreed. The final song faded, chairs scraped, yet nobody hurried, choosing to linger in the afterglow. As lights dimmed, Mia caught her reflection in a window, ring glowing, eyes bright, and understood, without ceremony, that she had become the hero of her own letter. Upstairs, she placed the velvet box on the windowsill beside the sunflower, both objects reflecting moonglow, twin reminders that hope and patience can bloom side by side, stretching roots into every crack perseverance once held together, an unspoken vow that tomorrow's agenda would mix spreadsheets with stargazing and keep joy on every line. Sunlight painted the horizon in peach tones as the apartment complex stirred earlier than usual, everyone eager to greet the first day of the community's new chapter. Mia stepped onto her balcony, engagement ring catching the dawn while neighbors across the courtyard waved like longtime pen pals finally meeting in person. Downstairs, a local journalist waited politely, notebook ready, but Mia agreed to the interview only if the headlines celebrated teamwork over fairy tale romance. Adrian brewed coffee in Mia's mismatched mug collection, whistling an off-key tune, because happiness does not always follow sheet music. Leo bounded from his room wearing a hand-painted shirt that read Rocket Crew Captain, believing titles stick better when written in permanent marker. Breakfast became an impromptu press conference when neighbors arrived with fresh fruit and bigger smiles, the living room buzzing like a beehive of gratitude. Adrian formally launched the Starbright Scholarship, pledging funding equal to one of his jets and joking that mines fly farther than metal anyway. Gasps were followed by applause, and even the skeptical reporter admitted the gesture seemed more blueprint than publicity. The trio walked Leo to school, where the principal greeted them under a hastily printed banner reading, "Welcome Future Makers," letters fluttering in playground wind. Adrian donated a set of laptops on the spot, promising coding workshops taught by his engineers, causing students to cheer loud enough to rattle ceiling tiles. Mia watched her son glow with pride, realizing the hallway to his dreams had just expanded into a 4-lane highway. After school drop-off, they drove to City Hall, discussing community grants with council members who seemed astonished at the speed of good news. Adrian credited Mia's letter as the blueprint, reminding officials that local voices are often the clearest architects of change. For lunch, they picnicked near the pier on fish tacos, waving at passerby who offered congrats instead of selfies to honor the intimate momentum of the moment. Adrian asked Mia about forgotten childhood dreams. She revealed plans for a community center where kids could study, dance, and imagine beyond rent cycles. He opened his notebook and sketched floor plans between salsa drips, promising her dream just landed on the funded list. Back in town, they toured an abandoned warehouse thick with spiderwebs and possibility, Leo acting as junior inspector, balancing a clipboard bigger than his torso. Each volunteer treated his observations as gospel, inflating his confidence like a balloon tied with string so it wouldn't drift away. Blueprints, cupcakes, and legal documents piled into the sedan as daylight began to fade like stage lights after the show's finale. Neighbors greeted their return with sparkling cider and a cardboard sign reading, "Welcome Home Heroes," letters traced in glitter glue. Adrian toasted the crowd, declaring the richest investment to be human trust bearing compound interest of kindness. Leo added a toast to cookies for breakfast, receiving unanimous approval that surprised no one. The mayor phoned requesting a ceremony in Mia's honor, but she deferred, asking that the spotlight remain on scholarship recipients instead. Ruby, still in headquarters, texted 12 thumbs-up emojis confirming media requests would highlight community narrative over personal mythology. As moonrise edged the sky, Mia and Adrian climbed to the rooftop, looking over a city now glowing like circuitry on a vast motherboard. They discussed wedding venues, leaning toward a small seaside lawn where gulls could serve as noisy ushers. Adrian suggested inviting every neighbor as a VIP. Mia insisted daisies decorate every table as homage to the first bouquet. Plans flowed easily, sealed by pinky promises that felt sturdier than notarized contracts. Leo burst onto the roof with a test batch of midnight cookies and declared them a resounding success based on crumb-covered smiles. The night's final act involved signing the first scholarship acceptance letter to a 6th grader who once feared tuition more than volcano drills. Mia's pen glided with unexpected authority, and the achievement humbled her more than any trophy. She slid the signed paper into an envelope, realizing she had become the mailer of miracles rather than the anxious sender. Before bed, Adrian read Leo a story about explorers following kindness instead of maps, the narrative sounding strikingly familiar. Mia tucked herself under possibilities printed on legal letterhead, whispering that tomorrow would bring builders, lawyers, and maybe a wedding planner with a sweet tooth. Adrian promised that every tomorrow would include room for daydreams folded like paper cranes. The apartment lights clicked off sequentially, but hope glowed farther than the courtyard string lights could reach. Outside, a stray balloon from the earlier toast floated skyward, carrying silent wishes to anyone watching the stars. Mia listened to its ribbon tapping the window, a tiny drum solo announcing intermission before the next great scene. She smiled into the darkness, certain that gratitude makes even quiet hall sound musical. Somewhere mail sorters loaded another bin, unaware that inside might lurk the next letter capable of repainting entire skylines with bold strokes of possibility, proof that paper and ink still outperform the loudest microphone when a truthful story rides inside their modest frames. 12 months later, the mayor stood on a newly built stage and declared the first official Letter Day festival open beneath banners cut from recycled envelopes. Streets overflowed with booths where children, pens in hand, wrote thank you notes to mentors while musicians played cheerful riffs that ricocheted off glass storefronts. Mia, now Mrs. Cole, cradled newborn Grace and watched Leo march by wearing a sash labeled Honorary Male Captain, his grin broader than the parade route. Adrian handed out sunflower yellow pins, answering every shy question about billionaires with a reminder that generosity is everyone's job description. The Starbright Scholarship now supported hundreds of students, many waving colored signs that read "Thanks Captain Leo," proof that big changes can sprout from tiny balconies. At the community center, tall windows framed coding labs, dance studios, and a lunch hall smelling of cinnamon rolls, Victory's unofficial mascot. Glass cases displayed landmark letters, including Mia's, preserved under museum lights that made ordinary notebook paper gleam like parchment from ancient legends. In the art room, kids painted rockets and sunflowers on a mural, so vivid even passing cars slowed to stare. Leo supervised the planetarium exhibit he built with volunteer engineers, guiding visitors through constellations with a laser pointer shaped like a pen. Festival volunteers sorted boxes of notebooks, colored pens, and heart-shaped stamps destined for rural schools miles beyond city limits. During the opening speech, Mia admitted the scariest moment had been trusting her story to a stranger, and hundreds of single parents nodded knowingly. She urged them to write anyway, because paper can cross oceans of doubt faster than the sturdiest ferry ever launched. Applause thundered and Adrian announced library buses loaded with tablets, every mile funded by merchandise profits from envelope-shaped snow cones. A brass band boomed a playful march while children danced behind bubble machines, their laughter forming invisible balloons that lifted spirits skyward. Under a striped tent, robotics students displayed mechanical arms that sorted mail 5 times faster than humans, though they insisted handwritten notes still carry the soul. Grace's bassinet turned into a photo booth where visitors posed, calling her first daughter of letters, though she mostly replied with hiccups. At sunset, fairy lights flickered on, echoing the engagement night, while residents arranged folding chairs for the annual open mic session of gratitude. A veteran thanked a 4th grader whose letter restored his desire to paint, and a freshman shared that Starbright kept her family housed during tuition storms. 12-year-old Jada read a message to her future self, vowing to invent solar-powered rockets. Her voice quivered yet carried beyond the last row. The crowd rewarded her dream with applause, so loud it wobbled the stage risers like jelly. Food trucks lined the curbs serving taco varieties named after punctuation marks, comma carnitas and semicolon salsa, because stories taste delicious. Adrian flipped tortillas beside the chef, proving that titles shrink when spatulas appear. The mayor unveiled a commemorative postage stamp featuring Mia's original envelope, declaring that every letter in the nation would now carry courage in its corner. Fireflies sparkled between planters as Mia pushed Grace's stroller to the rooftop to watch from above, her favorite vantage point. Adrian aimed a telescope at Saturn, and Leo explained the rings represented infinite chances for humanity to circle back and do better. Mia unrolled fresh stationery right there on the rooftop, drafting a note to next year's committee with ideas even bolder than today's success. She paused to wonder how a single request had multiplied into a chain reaction bright enough to light entire corridors of opportunity. A cool breeze fluttered Grace's blanket, reminding Mia that seeds of change sprout fastest when watered by community. Below, musicians tuned guitars for the closing concert. Their warm strums floated upward like elevator music for the stars. Adrian draped a blanket over Mia's shoulders and asked if she missed quiet days. She replied that silence is overrated when laughter harmonizes so well. The moon climbed, illuminating framed letters visible through center windows, handwritten history acting as nightlight for anyone chasing direction. Back at the plaza, the band struck up a new anthem titled "Open the Envelope," transforming the crowd into a punctuation mark dance floor. Leo launched a glow-stick rocket that arced above mention of his name and landed beside Grace's stroller, symmetry made tangible. Gold fireworks formed shapes of suns, rings, and tiny letters, their reflections rippling across harbor water like signatures written in light. Adrian whispered each spark reminded him of Mia's opening paragraph. She replied the rough draft still slept in her diary's back pocket. Volunteers distributed stamped postcards so attendees could jot reflections before leaving, ensuring the festival ended by planting tomorrow's mail. Couples lingered, scribbling notes to future selves, and schoolchildren wrote to imaginary pen pals living on Mars. The last booth closed at midnight, but lanterns stayed lit to guide late riders forging final thoughts into sentences. Mia carried Grace downstairs, humming, while Leo cataloged leftover pins for next year. Certain tradition had just merged with destiny. She glanced at the moon-washed courtyard one more time, realizing the night sky itself looked like sheet paper waiting for millions of brand-new stories, each begging to be stamped and sent into dawn, confident that somewhere a child gripping a pen would soon write the first line of the next magnificent chapter. 2 summers later, Letter Day expanded across the nation, and television helicopters circled the coastal city broadcasting crowds that spilled like confetti onto every block. Mia balanced toddler Grace on one hip while tightening Leo's rocket print tie, noticing he now stood almost at her shoulder. Banner letters spelling "Please write back" fluttered from recycled envelope bunting, an invitation for anyone with heartbeat and hope. Adrian answered interview questions while passing out collectible sunflower pins, assuring nervous teenagers that philanthropy starts with sharing lunch, not launching satellites. The Starbright total had surpassed 1,000 scholars, many parading homemade posters featuring envelope heroes and cardboard rockets. At the renovated warehouse, now a buzzing community center, coding labs clicked, studio mirrors reflected hip-hop choreography, and kitchen classrooms simmered with soup from global recipes. Glass cases added new artifacts, a farmer's daughter's polite plea that spurred a clean water pipeline, a veteran's thank you postcard, even Leo's first paper rocket now laminated. The mayor began festivities by unveiling a postage stamp bearing Mia's envelope and Adrian's sunflower, to appear on mail the following month. News crews filmed volunteers loading boxes of notebooks, pens, and pocket dictionaries into brightly painted buses destined for mountain schools. At center stage, Leo, newly 10, cracked jokes and reminded everyone that great stories begin with the cheerful words, "Dear Reader." Afternoon heat shimmered on pavement as Grace dozed beneath a daisy print stroller canopy, unaware of the history her yawn punctuated. A panel discussion featured Mia, who confessed her scariest moment had been licking the envelope flap and trusting the world to answer. She compared the leap to stepping off a dock before knowing whether the water below was deep enough for dreams to swim. Applause traveled the length of 3 blocks, bouncing off brick like overeager ping-pong balls. Adrian announced the launch of rolling library buses equipped with 3D printers, each mile sponsored by envelope-shaped snow cone sales. Children marched behind bubble machines, laughter popping louder than the bubbles themselves. Under a striped tent, robotic scholars displayed mail-sorting arms built from recycled bicycle parts, their message clear: creativity thrives on limited budgets. Grace's stroller became a photo booth again. Festival-goers lined up to pose with a toddler dubbed First Daughter of Letters. As sunset painted the harbor burnt orange, string lights clicked on, replicating the courtyard spectacle from engagement night, nostalgia wrapped in copper wire. Fold-out chairs formed a circle for the gratitude open mic. Speakers ranged from a shy boy, whose stutter vanished when reading thank you haiku, to an elderly baker who sponsored cookies for every scholarship party. A hush fell when Jada, now 14, read a progress letter to her younger self, detailing prototype solar rockets she had already built from soda cans. The resulting ovation shook light bulbs, proving hardware stores sell inspiration alongside nails. Food trucks offered menu items named after punctuation again, including exclamation fish and question mark quesadillas. Adrian flipped tortillas with teenagers from the culinary program, reminding them that recipes are just letters you can taste. A flash mob erupted, featuring scholarship students, firefighters, and city librarians dancing the updated Billionaire Boogie 2.0. On the hill overlooking downtown, a temporary postal history museum opened, curated by children who told stories using crayons and QR codes. Fireflies zigzagged like tiny paper planes, scripting invisible signatures in humid air. On the rooftop, Mia drafted a note to next year's committee, her pen's shadow longer than the antenna beside it. She paused to marvel at how an action once powered by anxiety now fueled thousands of coordinated miracles. A gentle breeze fluttered Grace's daisy hat, reminding Mia that hope requires constant airing out so it never grows stale. Below, acoustic guitars tuned for the closing concert, chords floated upward, encouraging even shy chimneys to exhale harmony. Adrian joined Mia, draping a festival scarf across her shoulders and asking if she missed the quieter chapter of their story. She answered that memory is quieter than reality, but reality is far kinder when communities volunteer to write new paragraphs together. They returned to ground level where neighbors saved front row seats and served shimmering cups of miracle soda flavored with lemon and optimism. The band launched a rousing anthem titled Open the Envelope Again, turning the plaza into a glamour-powered dance floor. Leo released a glowing paper rocket wrapped in LED strips. It soared above rooftops, drifted down, and landed gently beside Grace, symmetry gifting applause and silence. Gold fireworks bloomed into shapes of hearts, suns, and tiny letters, their reflections stippling the harbor like Morse code for joy. Adrian whispered that each spark reminded him of Mia's first paragraph. She replied she still kept the rough draft hidden between recipe cards. Volunteers handed out stamped postcards so festival-goers could capture the night in sentences, guaranteeing tomorrow's mailboxes a sunrise of surprises. As midnight bells chimed, Mia looked skyward and imagined constellations rearranging themselves into envelopes wide enough to carry every new dream launched beneath them, confident that tomorrow's city would awaken to footlong piles of courage addressed simply to whom it may inspire, ready for postal workers and stargazers alike to sort, stamp, and send every last wish into the waiting universe.